Will cover local policy interventions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the Bozeman area. Some energy issue background. In 2018, Bozeman community emissions totaled more than 607 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, the measure the EPA uses to more simply quantify greenhouse gas emissions, wherein other greenhouse gases are measured in their CO2 equivalent as calculated by potency in affecting climate change. Categorized by sector, transportation accounted for 38% of emissions. Transportation is also the fastest growing source of emissions, increasing 50% from 2008 to 2018. Categorized by emission source, electricity accounted for 29%, and natural gas, used for heating buildings, accounted for 27%. Of that electricity, 40%, or slightly less than 12% of total emissions by generation source, came from fossil fuels. Per capita carbon emissions decreased 15% from 2008 to 2018. However, total emissions increased 16%. The differential is from population growth, which is unlikely to abate and is very difficult to incentivize without severe trade-offs. The macro consequences of unabated emissions are well known. Some particular localized figures from the Montana Climate Assessment include an increase in average annual temperature of 6 degrees Fahrenheit by 2069 and 9.8 degrees Fahrenheit by 2099. Taking all of the above into account, Bozeman must significantly decrease emissions while continuing to have high population growth. Stakeholders. Northwestern Energy is a major stakeholder in the issue of CO2 equivalent emissions. Northwestern Energy is the utility providing power to Bozeman and is the only owner of the Colstrip power plants opposed to their closing. Energy consumers are another important stakeholder that is affected by the costs associated with unrestrained emissions. Energy consumers have a vested interest in keeping energy costs low, including in the long term. How that is reflected in policy preferences is related to whether the externalities of energy are included in the price tag. Economic analysis. The social costs of carbon for Bozeman in a business-as-usual scenario are projected to rise to approximately $100 million in 2050. The per-resident per-year cost, not counting externalities, in 2016 was $2,200 per person. The cost is estimated to rise to $2,900 per person by 2050, with no change in the energy portfolio. The estimated cost in a scenario with a 70% reduction in carbon emissions is $850 per person per year. Decreasing direct vehicle emissions and increasing walking, biking, and carpooling, all of which would be incentivized by a carbon tax, would save an estimated combined $64.4 million by 2050. Scale analysis. All spatial scales are affected to some degree by Bozeman's CO2 equivalent emissions as they travel into the atmosphere. The specific challenges described above are more directly germane to Bozeman in terms of reducing those specific figures of emissions. Long and medium and even short-term effects of unabated emissions include increased forest fires, droughts, and increasing temperatures. Proposed solution and alternative energy analysis. Implementing a carbon tax is the fundamental solution. The basic driver of public policy is costs, and rational individuals in the community, utility companies, local government, and business want to minimize costs. Currently, the costs of emitting greenhouse gases are not factored into market rate prices of gasoline and diesel fuel and electricity. Carbon taxes have been frequently proposed at the federal level in the United States and have been implemented at the state or province level in the U.S. and Canada. City level or local option carbon taxes are less often discussed, but there are some examples. A notable example is Boulder, Colorado. First implemented in 2006, Boulder's carbon tax is levied on residential, commercial, and industrial properties per kilowatt hour at a rate of $0.0049 per kilowatt hour for residential customers, $0.0009 per kilowatt hour for commercial customers, and $0.003 per kilowatt hour for industrial customers. Xcel Energy, the utility in Boulder, collects these taxes when customers are billed. The average annual cost per residential household is $21, $94 for commercial spaces, and $96,000 for industrial businesses. In the 7-year period from 2009 to 2016, the City of Boulder estimated the tax to raise $1.8 million in revenue. Direct emission reductions are harder to estimate. The City of Boulder cites the figure of 50,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent were reduced due to that tax over that same time period. The revenue of Boulder's carbon tax is invested in efforts by the city to increase building efficiency and transition to alternative energy sources. Economists debate the best way to spend carbon tax revenues, with more equity-focused arguments noting that carbon taxes, like all taxes on consumption, place a higher burden on lower-income households. To ameliorate that effect, direct rebates can be sent to lower-income households, or other regressive taxes, such as sales taxes, can be lowered. My message to the class of 2070 is simple. I hope when you're watching this, you are watching this, because if you are, we would have had to have made some progressive steps to ameliorate the consequences of our current consumptive habits. If Bozeman were to pass a local level carbon tax, the net effect on global emissions would not be significant, but it would be part of a larger trend of state and local and federal governments helping to price in the externalities of how we transport ourselves and how we power our homes. And I can't say in a purely quantitative sense what that net reduction looks like from a carbon tax or what the environment's going to be in 50 years. But if we do make it so that there is a cost to driving anywhere whenever you want or burning dirty coal, that is more reflective of what the actual cost is, not just the market rate, that will create an incentive structure for more hydro, more nuclear, more conservation, more biking, and more walking. And, if we can start that now on a policy level, hopefully, when you're watching this, you're able to watch this in a, functional society, because failing to do this will almost certainly lead to, some pretty significant breakdowns in social order. And currently, there's an axiom from Robert Heinlein, they popularized it at least, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And right now, we're eating a free lunch on your generation, and we need to start paying for that. And the first step to start paying for that is to start paying those costs to the environment that are produced, those externalities.